Welcome back everyone to another video, and today is the first episode of what's going to be an ongoing series really all summer long for the NFL offseason, where we're going to be going pretty in-depth on every single team, talking about this upcoming season for them, what it might mean as far as players and injury history for players, strength of schedule, coaching, division stuff. It's going to be hopefully the most in-depth videos I've ever done on my channel. We are basically grading every single player on the roster, almost, with the exception of like some practice squad guys and guys really far back in the depth chart. And so it's not going to be like a tier list thing. I already have them graded. I'm going to have some things on the screen, kind of like some visual aids as far as like the players in the order in the depth chart and how I see them performing. You guys will get it as we go along, but I still wanted to also mix in just kind of like what I've done a lot over the course of my NFL videos on this channel, as far as just kind of going over statistically what the team looked like last year and what they look like this year, but then also providing kind of a more in-depth look at things. So hopefully this works out okay. We are starting with the Panthers though, and I'm going to be completely honest. The reason I started with the Panthers is because this is my favorite team, and whenever I was kind of designing and thinking about how I wanted this series to look, it helps for me to be able to do that with a team I am the most familiar with. And then when I have kind of the blueprint done, I guess per se, then going from there and doing the additional research I need to do on every single team to make sure, you know, I have it all very in-depth for every single team. So it helps for me to start with the team I'm most familiar with, which is the Panthers. These videos are going to be uploaded basically by division in order from last to first. So I have the Panthers coming in last place this year. We'll get into like why and the exact record, all that kind of stuff later on. But yeah, let's do a brief just kind of, I mean, I guess we have to, I don't want to, but a brief little look at what 2023 was like for the Panthers, starting with kind of Bryce Young in the offense. So Bryce Young last year, he played in 16 to 17 games. He did sit out that one game against Seattle, where he had 2,877 passing yards to 11 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. You know, it's tough. I'm going to get into, obviously, you know, his environment around him and why those numbers may have looked like, you know, what they did. But for what Bryce Young could control himself, he still played poorly. And there were still things that during the draft process he was labeled to be very good at that he just didn't really excel at last year at all. And again, there are outside influences to that that kind of impacted him. But again, on his own, you know, he wasn't great at the deep ball. He did panic more than what he was labeled to, which again, that kind of hinges on some of the outside factors. He wasn't really poised down the stretch. You know, he was not as pro ready as he was labeled, honestly. Even with the things he could control, he himself was not as pro ready as he was labeled, at least in my opinion. And I think looking at the tape, looking at some of the throws he was making and when he was making them and just panicking, it wasn't, again, I don't think it was how he was really supposed to be, you know, projected to play. But again, a lot of outside influences on that, which is why I'm not going to hold that all against him. And again, we'll get into that a bit later. But yeah, so Bryce Young's rookie season, not very good, but he survived. And as far as the rushing game goes, it honestly wasn't really that bad. I honestly kind of wish it was maybe utilized a bit more to take more of the pressure off Bryce Young because, look, you can't run constantly. I'm not saying Chuba Hubbard's like a top back in the league, but if it's either, you know, running the ball a lot and not advancing the ball as much, that's better than throwing the ball more or throwing screens more, not advancing the ball as much, and turning the ball over. Like, if we have to choose a slower offense to run, let's choose the one that doesn't result in as many turnovers, which is running the ball. So I wish they would have done that a bit more and utilized Chuba Hubbard a bit more. He had 238 carries on the season, though, almost 1,000 yards with 5 touchdowns. Miles Sanders is a huge disappointment, and again, even for the running backs, the same as Bryce Young, you know, there were some outside influences, such as the O-line, that really did hinder their performance as well. I think especially for Miles Sanders, though, again, very big fall off from his season in Philadelphia, you know, before last season. So not a great season from him. 432 yards from Miles Sanders, only 1 touchdown. And other than that, nothing really right home about as far as the rest of the running game. And then receiving wise, you know, there's a huge drop off from Adam Thielen. It is basically half of those yards is the person second, which you never want to see because, you know, unless your tight end way more involved, which they didn't. So it was just really Adam Thielen was the guy, and after that, huge drop offs to DJ Chark. And I think a lot of Thielen's performance as well. Actually, no, I'm not gonna say a lot of. Some of Thielen's performance, though, is also just really being force-fed the ball because there was not anyone else really able to get open. That was a huge issue for the Panthers wide receivers last year with separation. There was pretty much none of it. Seriously, there was next to none of it. But Adam Thielen, granted, I mean, to his credit, he did play well when he got the ball. Whether he was force-fed or not, he did come down with the ball. I think he still is not obviously prime Adam Thielen, but I think he still has a bit more good football left in him that was maybe thought, honestly. He had a good season. DJ Chark, touchdown leader as far as receptions go. I think just touchdown leader on the team in general. But really just was not the best year for him. He dropped passes. He fumbled out of the back of the end zone on what could have been a touchdown. He had a lot of mistakes. But for what his mistakes were, he also had some not terrible plays either. He had a really clutch catch against the Falcons to kind of set them up in field goal range to actually ultimately win that game. So, he had some highlights as well. Mingo was a pretty big disappointment for a rookie, but again, same as Bryce Young, there's a lot of outliers and outside forces, not outliers, that impacted his play as well. So no touchdowns for him and only 418 yards on the season. And the final guy I'm going to go over is Tommy Tremble. 3 touchdowns, and yards-wise, obviously not the biggest year, but, he was a bit better than his rookie year, and honestly, I would like to see him again this season, and we'll talk about that a bit later here. I'm just trying to kind of briefly go through last season, so I won't spend too much time on this. I will also mention Terrace Marshall Jr., who is someone that I've already laughed at myself for having this bad take, but last offseason, I thought this guy was going to step up really big, maybe be like wide receiver 1, and, he did not even crack 200 yards, so that was not my best take. Defensively, though, it was really the saving grace of this team, and if the offense was even just halfway competent, they probably would have won 2, maybe even 3 more games. This defense was actually really solid, especially considering the injuries that went around. I mean, J.C. Horn went down again. You had... I can't find where I was about to look at. Von Bell was hurt for a time. Xavier Woods was hurt for a time. And then even there's one more player that I was going to talk about, too, that was hurt. And now I can't remember who it was going to be. It was Shaq Thompson. He was down here. I forgot. He got hurt, missed basically the entire season. So, for what Evero had to work with as far as, the defense, I think he did a pretty good job getting these guys in the right place to succeed. And for what it's worth, I think some unsung heroes, like Frankie Louvu, who really isn't known, I think, league-wide enough as he probably should be. He's a great player. He's unfortunately off the roster now, but, he had a great season. Troy Hill, I think, as well, is fairly underrated relative to the team, not across the entire league, but, he actually makes some pretty good plays for the Panthers. But, yeah, other than that, it was, I think, a lot of scheme, getting guys in positions to make plays. And unfortunately, like I said before, I think if the offense was halfway competent, they could have won more games because this defense, it would hold teams in the first half to, low amount of points. But because the offense just could not get first downs, it could not get consistent offense, the defense would constantly go back out there, and eventually, as the game went on, get worn down because they just didn't get that long of a break because the offense couldn't do anything. So that's why I feel like if the offense was a bit better, even just a little bit, maybe could have squeaked out a couple more wins because this defense deserved more wins for sure. But, yeah, that's going to be the biggest kind of, recap of last year I'm going to give for the Panthers. Frank Reich got fired, obviously, and he was horrible. And, yeah, let's just go on to next season. It's a lot happier than this. Well, hopefully happier than this. So starting off with coaches. So we have Brad Idzik for offensive coordinator. I give him a B+. This is really kind of Dave Canale's right-hand man. They were together in Seattle. They were together last year in Tampa Bay. And now he comes with them to Carolina. I love the combination. I love Dave getting his guy that he trusts for offense to help Bryce Young, all that kind of stuff bounce back. I gave him a B+. I love that. Dave Canales, I gave an A- for this season. This guy is someone that has proven to help quarterbacks. In Seattle, Geno Smith, all of a sudden this guy, out of nowhere from that Russ trade, he looks great. Seattle has a very solid season. Last season with Baker Mayfield, Baker's always been someone that it looks like the potential is always there to be a solid quarterback, but it's always kind of like a struggle. Dave Canales not only had a system that benefited Baker, but it thrived on getting Mike Evans and their playmakers the ball. And Baker Mayfield did a great job of doing that. Like, he really did. And he helped Baker Mayfield a ton. This is someone that has experience and specifically helping quarterbacks. That's why I'm very high on him being in Carolina. I give him an A- for this year. I think he's going to have an excellent year. He's going to really help Bryce Young out in that offense. We're going to see some changes, I think, throughout this season of things getting a lot better for Carolina. Maybe it won't result in 10 wins, but it's going to look a whole lot better. And I think a lot of this can be because of Dave Canales and Brad Idzik on offense. And I'm not gonna lie, I am not 100% sure how you say his first name. I believe it's Ayero Avero, but I may have just butchered that. So I'm just gonna call him Avero. But this is someone that's an excellent defensive coordinator. This guy was excellent in Denver. He comes to Carolina last year, and he does a great job. Like, he does a very good job because Carolina had a lot of injuries. J.C. Horn goes down again. Shaq Thompson gets hurt. Their secondary is already fairly depleted. You have guys like Troy Hill in there and Sam Franklin in there. And, you know, it should not have been as consistently tough as it should have been for offenses to get past that Panthers defense. But he had guys making plays in the right positions. I love the scheme. I love everything Avera brings to the table, and I think if guys stay healthy, it's going to be very similar caliber defense to where it was last year, because the Panthers defense last year kept them in games, but the offense just couldn't do anything, and when they couldn't do anything, it eventually wore down the defense, and then they lost games. But I love Avera. I love what he brings to the table. I love the scheme. A for him. I have him as the best coach this year for the Panthers across the table. But yeah, I have a big coaching change as far as the big head coach or the big coaches, offensive coordinator, head coach, and defense coordinator. I have a great year from all of them. I love the hires. I think they bring a lot to the table. I think they help out this Panthers offense and defense that needs a whole lot of reworking. So going into 2024, I currently have Bryce Young being a B-tier quarterback. As far as the other quarterbacks go, Dalton I put C+. As far as backups go, Dalton's one of the better backups in the league, and if he got in, I dare I say this, if Bryce Young happened to get with an injury, which I don't want to even put out there, but if that were to happen, I think Dalton is one of the more competent backups in the league. I think he, proven veteran, got in last season for a game and honestly played really well. Granted, he did throw 52 times or something that game. And then as far as Jake Plummer goes, not very good. Just kind of threw him on there as a third quarterback. But for Bryce Young, though, so I say B tier here for a few reasons, and we're going to talk about these as we go throughout the entire roster with this kind of grading system. But I will give Dan Morgan, who's the Panthers GM, a lot of credit because he really prioritized Bryce Young in both free agency and the draft. Free agency threw a lot of money at some linemen like Damian Lewis and Robert Hunt to come in and hopefully help give a huge boost to that O-line, give Bryce Young time to actually throw the ball. That was something that was a huge issue last year that really impacted Bryce Young's ability to throw the ball accurately, to be honest. I mean, as simple as that sounds, it was terrible. He's already a bit undersized, and when he constantly has guys in his face and has to run, Bryce Young isn't really a scrambling quarterback. Like, he can do it if need be, but I don't think his really first option is to immediately get the ball and have to run out and run for his life. Or really any quarterback's option. Obviously, some guys like to be on the run a bit more than others, but, Bryce Young looked very uncomfortable throughout the entirety of last season. And going into this year, like I said, we got some new O-line up there, and I am hoping that, that really is all the difference for Bryce Young. And while it's only half of his issues as far as, his struggles as last season goes, with the O-line improved, I think it helps out a whole lot. And as far as his weapons go as well, I think, again, they also prioritize that. You trade for Deontay Johnson. I honestly love that move. Deontay Johnson, his main thing is being a separator. And that is the huge thing that the Panthers wide receivers as a whole did not have last year at all. They could not get any separation. And it resulted in Bryce Young having to kind of force the ball in places it probably shouldn't have gone. The O-line made him panic. I think this year he's going to put a lot of that behind him. And a big thing is also going to be coaching, which, again, we will get to. I'm not going to go too much into that right now. But Bryce Young, I do think, is set up for a step up this year, or even a leap. I think, again, and as I said at the beginning of the video, I have the Panthers coming in last place. I'm not saying this is going to be like a 10-game turnaround by any means, but last season was really the floor. So I really feel like Bryce Young can really only go up from here, if I'm being honest. Like, I think the weapons are going to make a huge difference. I think the O-line will give him more time to throw, and he can play into his strengths more. And I think because of the coaching changes, he will also be able to be comfortable, an assistant that makes him comfortable as well. And I think some things, even like footwork, already looks way better on him. So I'm not expecting a, comeback player of the year. I mean, I don't think he'd be up for that anyways, but comeback player of the year or MVP level season or anything like that. But I think Bryce Young will at least show that consistently he can be the franchise quarterback. And even last year, he showed flashes. He had big plays when he, had to really try and do something. He did make it happen a lot of the times with, not a whole lot to work with. Even like that Texans game, he had a big throw to Adam Thielen on the sideline where, you can tell he's got the tools. He just has to put it all together. And I think last year was the perfect storm of everything that could possibly go wrong, going wrong, and those tools just not coming together when they should have. So that's really my thoughts on Bryce Young in the quarterback room. I'm not going to go too into, Dalton or Jake Plummer or anything like that. And also one thing to consider as well is that when I'm doing these videos, obviously some teams are going to be like, 2 months from now by the time I get to them. So if some players are not on the roster, that's just, I can't do much about that if I already record it. So, again, most of the players that I would expect to not be on the roster are probably either not graded at all or have like a D tier grade anyways. So, hopefully it doesn't matter too much. But, yeah, that's my thoughts on Bryce Young, at least for right now. And next is that O-line. I tried to kind of format this in a way where it kind of makes sense, hopefully. Akim Ekwonu is the left tackle. Damian Lewis is the left guard. So, you can kind of see the arrows there. For the starters, and then the guys in the bottom left and right hand corners are just kind of backups or depth pieces, basically. So hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, so starting with Ike Ekwonu, this guy had a pretty solid rookie season, and then last year he looked lost all the time. He would just completely miss assignments. He'd get knocked over. He didn't look quick at all. His feet. I mean, he seriously looked like he had no idea what he was doing. Like he just applied for this job off the street and got it and then realized, oh my gosh, I have to block these people. I'm in the NFL now. I think a lot of that kind of has to do with the Panthers' offensive system. I don't really think it benefited anybody, to be perfectly honest with you. I think it was just whatever Frank Wright wanted to do is what he wanted to do, whether it played into guys' strengths or not. And Icky clearly took a huge hit from this, and I'm not going to blame that all on coaching at all because some of the things were literally just kind of mind-boggling mistakes where it's like, even if it wasn't really your assignment, like there's a guy right in front of you, and like you just don't even put a body on him. You don't even make an effort to get him. So it was a really weird season. This is the highest you will see me on Icky after what we saw last year. I'm giving him a B+ going into next year because I think this O-line is going to improve a lot because granted, Icky, while he did play terrible, some of those things also result from his teammates missing blocks and missing guys. So it wasn't always on him. A lot of that does result from pressure, just from the guys next to you not doing their job either. So I think he's going to benefit from a new offensive scheme and new linemen in there not putting as much pressure on him. But again, this is the highest you will see me on. I'm saying B+. I think he kind of regains his confidence and his performance basically from his rookie season. I think he builds off of that and he just kind of flushes last year out of his mind. But if he is bad this year, I don't want to say I'm going to give up on him, but you will not see me giving him nearly this high of a grade going into next season if he struggles again this year. I think last season, a lot of guys get some kind of cop-outs and some excuses. But, if it happens again this year, I can't really justify that. But I gave him a B+. I gave Damian Lewis a B+ as well. This is someone who was honestly really solid in Seattle. And I think, people saw the amount of money that him and Robert Hunt got to come and play in Carolina, but you were 2-15. No one is coming to play here out of just the goodness of their heart. They're going to want a lot of money, especially knowing they can make a serious difference. Like, they have a bit more leverage, not the team. The team doesn't have a whole lot to offer from what they just saw from last season. It takes guys getting the right amount of money, believing in the new coaching changes, believing in, the quarterback in there. There's a lot of things that go into it. So seeing them shovel out a lot of money makes sense because I don't think Damian Lewis sat down and just decided Carolina was the place he wanted to go because it was like a fun place to play. I don't think anybody thinks it's a fun place to play after last year. But I do think he'll make a big difference in Carolina, so I gave him a B+. I think he's a great player. And as far as Austin Corbett goes, I gave him a B. Some people might not like this depending on how you feel about his change because he is actually moving from guard to center. This scares me a little bit because just honestly, the way the O-line was last season, I am a little worried about a guy who struggled last season on and off changing positions. I understand he did actually play center in college a little bit, but I don't know. That still worries me, so I'm not super confident in that. I gave him a B. Austin Corbett's a great player, and if he was still at guard, he would probably have got a B+, or even A- for me, but it scares me a little bit there. so I gave him a B. And Robert Hunt, A+. I think this guy's awesome. He gets a lot of money, but it's because he can do a lot of things well. Really, everything you could really ask of him at guard, he can do. And Bryce Young needs it. I think this is a guy that's going to come in, kind of how I mentioned for Icky, someone on the O-line that's going to do their job well, and other guys are going to benefit off of that. I think Robert Hunt is that guy that's going to really make a statement and kind of, set the tone for the O-line. So I absolutely love him. I think he's great. I gave him an A+. I see a big year from him. I think he was great in Miami as well. He, I think, only allowed very few pressures, and I want to say only 1 sack, but I might be wrong about that. But I just want to throw that out there just in case I am correct. I know it was around there, though. And as far as Taylor Moton goes, this guy's a good tackle. He struggled a bit off and on last year, but again, everyone did. Like, literally everyone, this entire team did. So kind of the same reasons as I've given Icky. I think the new scheme will help him. I think the guys in the O-line doing their job a bit better will help him out. And I do see a good season from him. Taylor Moton's a great O-lineman. He's a great tackle. But, there was just no highlights last season for really anybody on this team. And I think a lot of people bounce back, including him. Next is going to be Brady Christensen in the bottom right. I put C-. This guy was not that great last year. I will say it makes me very happy seeing him as a depth piece, though, and not a starter. If this guy was a starter, I'd be a little afraid. But right now, I don't think a whole lot's going to be asked of him like last year to where he's just not ready or just not good enough to handle it. So as a depth piece, great. I don't really care too much about that, but, he's just kind of there. And in the bottom left, I believe I'm saying this correctly. I could be way off. Josh Nijman, I think is how you say his name. If I just butchered that, I'm really sorry. I gave him a C+. This guy was actually fairly solid in Green Bay. And again, as a depth piece, if this guy was a starter, it would worry me a little bit. I think he's a good enough starter. I wouldn't say he's like the guys that Carolina brought in. But I think as just a veteran depth piece, this doesn't really upset me too much. I think he's just going to kind of be there. I don't think he's going to be terrible when he gets in, but I don't think he's going to be great either. He's just kind of there. And honestly, I like the Panthers O-line a lot going into next season. I really hope it all comes together like it should be. Because, again, I think this is well assembled by Dan Morgan. I'll give him a lot of credit there. And then let's get into the running back room. So we have Chuba Hubbard. We have Jonathan Brooks, who is a rookie. We have Miles Sanders, and we have Rashad Penny. So just starting with Chuba Hubbard here. I gave him an A- because of two things. So, number one, I think this guy is honestly fairly underrated anyways. And as the O-line hurt Bryce Young last year, I think it also hurt Chuba Hubbard last year. I think this guy is honestly... I think he's an 1,000-yard running back when given enough snaps. Like last year, I think with better blocking, honestly, and I think he gets that, to be perfectly honest with you. Jonathan Brooks, though, here's the thing. Here's the second reason why I think Chuba Hubbard is going to do a bit better than Jonathan Brooks. Jonathan Brooks is an amazing running back, and honestly, if he didn't tear his ACL last year, he probably would have been maybe even a little bit higher. I mean, I think he already went in, the second or third round, but... I think he goes a bit higher. This guy was at Texas with Bijan Robinson. He was very good, and he's a big running back. But the ACL injury scares me a little bit. I know he's supposed to be ready by training camp, but I kind of see this as more of a, with Chuba Hubbard in there, because the Panthers have said before that they want to run the ball this year. They want to take the pressure off of Bryce Young. They want to establish a running game. So these guys are going to be getting plenty of reps, plenty of snaps. And with Chuba Hubbard as your starter, I don't think you get desperate and throw a rookie in there coming off a knee injury that doesn't quite need to be in there enough yet. I think Jonathan Brooks is going to make a lot of plays this year, though, in the receiving game. This guy's actually a pretty good receiving back. He's pretty good out of the backfield. This is someone that I think was definitely drafted with the upside of being a great running back to establish that good running game they want, but also helping Bryce Young, being able to take the pressure off of him for Bryce Young to dump it underneath to him, and Brooks to be able to take it however far. I think this is a great player. The injury compared to him not necessarily being needed to be the running back one immediately is why I am still a little conservative when it comes to how I'm going to project his rookie season. I think he'll be a great factor in the receiving game, so I think he'll get a lot more snaps there than Chuba does. But as far as running goes, I think if Chuba establishes himself fairly well like he did last year, I don't think there's a reason to force Brooks to take a horrible amount of snaps that take away from Chuba Hubbard and jeopardizes his health. So again, I think as the year goes on, though, Chuba will earn less and less snaps because I think Brooks will establish himself more and more and more. I just think that won't really happen until probably that week 8, week 9, if that. Maybe even a little bit later. I trust Chuba Hubbard a lot, though. I think he's a good running back. I think he'll benefit. I think he will also benefit from the O line changes. But yeah, I think Brooks definitely beats him out in the receiving game. It's just a matter of when he ever gets healthy and fully healthy, and just shows the type of player he is for him to get kind of the main running back role on this team. For Miles Sanders and Rashad Penny, who knows if either one of these guys will be on the roster by the time the season rolls around. I could see the Panthers cutting Miles Sanders. I could also see them just cutting Rashad Penny. I don't think they keep 4 running backs on the roster. Maybe they will. I don't really know. But regardless, I don't really see either one of them being that great. But honestly, I would trust Rashad Penny more than Miles Sanders compared to like what I saw last season from Miles Sanders. That's why I have him a C+. And as I said for Bryce Young and Chuba Hubbard, Miles Sanders was also hindered by the O-line play last year. But a lot of it was just Miles Sanders. There is still shots. I'll try and find one to put on the screen right now of Miles Sanders last year. And if I can't find one, then hear me out here. Because there would be, as if you're kind of looking at it from his point of view with the ball, there'd be plenty of gaps. And he just wouldn't go through them. Like, he would just kind of go up the middle, run into guys. Like, his vision was awful. And he didn't really accelerate well out of those blocks that were actually given to him either. So I don't trust him very much. I think he benefited from the Eagles system a lot. And I think last year he came back down to earth a little bit as far as his play goes, and then was also hurt by the O-line play. So I think it was a mix of both. But some of it is just really inexcusable, and that's why I'm just not high on him at all coming into this season. Rashad Penny, I think, is a good running back, and I think, honestly, if he just hits the gaps that Miles Sanders couldn't last year, he's already a little bit better than Miles Sanders is. That's why I gave him the C+. So, yeah, that's the running back room, at least as I see it going into 2024. And so then as far as the tight end room goes, this is pretty interesting, and I think there's like a little bit of a dilemma here. So let's just go ahead and start this with Tommy Tremble being a C- and Ja'Tavion Sanders, the rookie the Panthers drafted, who in my opinion was honestly kind of a steal in the 4th round, being a C+. So Tommy Tremble, I think, has honestly shown some promise. I think this guy is pretty athletic for a tight end. I mean, he has like a pretty cool hurdle highlight from last season. As you guys saw earlier, he had 3 touchdowns last year. He really isn't awful, but I think he has a lot of things working against him because he just had to sit through some horrible years in Carolina where, I don't think anyone league-wide is high on this guy. I'm sure a lot of football fans don't even really know who this guy even is. I think he honestly has a lot of potential given a good quarterback. The issue, though, is that now not only is there another tight end drafted that is already his competition, but Ja'Tavion Sanders is very athletic, and he's a good receiving threat. Tommy Tremble is also, I think, a pretty good receiving threat. So that works against him a little bit as far as a guy that's probably a bit better than him in the receiving game anyway that's now coming in. And then the second reason, which kind of plays into the reason I just said, is that Ja'Tavion Sanders is this new regime's pick. Like, Tommy Tremble was not picked by these guys. He's been here for a couple seasons. Guys that are taking this team over right now found their guy. They like Ja'Tavion Sanders. They want this guy in here. So Tommy Tremble has a lot working against them because, this regime, not that they don't like Tommy Tremble, but they didn't pick him. This isn't like their guy. So they don't really have any kind of attachment to him. And if Ja'Tavion Sanders comes in and plays as well as I think he honestly probably will in the receiving game, I think Tommy Tremble is going to lose his role a lot. It's unfortunate because it's kind of, it's not totally his fault. His rookie season wasn't great. Last season, I think, showed some of his potential if given a good system to work in. And I think if this offense trends up, Tommy Tremble could have honestly been a fairly good tight end. But now, I think it's just honestly unlucky when it comes down to it. It's just unlucky. You sat through very bad years. You didn't perform great at times. And then when you did, it went unnoticed because the whole team was just completely awful anyways. And then when you finally maybe have a chance to be more of a factor in a team that might be trending upward, they draft a guy that they want, preferably above you because, they know more about him. They scouted this guy. They like him. So it sucks. I feel bad for Tommy Tremble to a certain degree, to be honest, but I think Ja'Tavion Sanders will be the better tight end as a rookie. I have him as a C+. I think he'll be great in the receiving game. I did a video probably a month ago going over the rookies drafted for Bryce Young and just how much they can really help him out. And yeah, I think Sanders can help out a lot. So I think Tommy Tremble, is in a tough situation. And as far as Ian Thomas and Stefan, I'm not even sure how you say his name, Sullivan go, they both suck. And to be honest with you, Ian Thomas needs to go buy a lottery ticket because I am not sure how he has stayed on this roster through this many coaching changes. I mean, this dude has had, Matt Rule take over, and he's had Frank Wright take over, and now Dave Canales take over, or Canales, however you say, I can't remember now, but take over, and this guy's just still on the roster. I seriously don't know I mean, I can't even imagine how he got to be this lucky. But I will say, and I am like halfway joking, halfway, not completely. I am halfway joking though. Ian Thomas is not very good. He is incredibly slow, and it's infuriating to watch him in the receiving game catch a pass where a typical tight end or anyone with even the slight bit of speed or survival instincts will probably get 10 yards more than he ends up getting. It's infuriating to watch that. To his credit, though, and in my opinion, the reason he is still on this roster at all is as a blocker. He is probably the best blocking tight end the Panthers have had in a while, and that's if that is not the reason, I genuinely have no idea what it is. I'm gonna be completely honest with you guys. If it is not his blocking, I don't know why this dude's still here. Then as Sullivan goes, yeah, I just he's just part of the tight end room. I don't really have anything to say about him. I think he had like maybe a catch or two last season, but that's about it. So. That's my thoughts on the tight end room. I think Jatavion Sanders could be a major factor going into this year, and I feel bad for Tommy Tremble. It's basically to summarize. All right, and now for the weapons, or I mean, really just receivers, I guess, because I already kind of separated, running backs and tight ends. But as far as receivers go, I wanted to save this for the last part of the offense here to really talk about. I want to spend a little bit of time on this. So, Deontay Johnson, I already kind of mentioned this. I loved this trade because the Panthers only had to give up Dante Jackson, who... He's I don't even know what to say about him. He's not that great. I'm gonna be honest. He's had a decent career, but he gets hurt. He misses assignments. He gets blown by. He's fast, or at least used to be. That's really all I have to say about him. This guy probably wasn't gonna be on the roster anyway, so I think the Panthers were probably ecstatic that the Steelers wanted him for the receiver that the Panthers really wanted anyways. I'm not gonna say the Steelers got fleeced. I think the Panthers did win that trade. I think Deontay Johnson, when it comes down to it, is just going to be way more valuable for both the Steelers or the Panthers than Dante Jackson would be for either one of them at this stage in his career. Deontay Johnson, I gave an A- to. I think this guy is really going to be the guy here. I know Panthers fans, I guess I wouldn't say all Panthers fans, a lot of them love the rookie, Xavier Legette, and I think he'll be great too. But Deontay Johnson, let's not forget about this guy. This guy is an amazing route runner. He gets open, and that, while it sounds simple, is a huge change for Carolina because they had nobody open last year. So for a guy to kind of specialize in route running and separation, I think is the guy they needed. This is like, Adam Thielen was the guy last year because of just, there was no one else. Deontay Johnson can be the guy this year because he is good at getting open, and he's a good receiver anyway. I think, a season ago, whatever it was, he couldn't find the end zone, but that's really an outlier in his career. This guy's still a great receiver, and I loved this trade for Carolina. So I ended up giving Deontay Johnson an A-, which for me is probably, at least for receivers, around that kind of 900 to 1,000 yard season. I think he's going to be quite good, and I think he's going to kind of take over the role that Adam Thielen had, but I think he's going to be even better, to be honest with you. Adam Thielen gave a B grade. And also, just for the record, I should have said this earlier. These guys are obviously not in order as far as, the highest grade to the lowest grade. I did this in order of the depth chart just so it makes it easier to understand for that reason. And two, that way we can see guys that I have or that I'm personally higher on than guys that are actually ahead on the depth chart. So I just want to throw that out there as well. Adam Thielen, though, gave a B tier grade because I think his role is just going to slowly get smaller and smaller. He's at the tail end of his career. I think he saw some good football left in him, but I don't see him getting 1,000 yards again this season. I really don't. With the guys they brought in like Deontay Johnson and Xavier Legette, I think Adam Thielen is more of like that 700 to 800 yard year this year. And that's good. In my opinion, that is where Adam Thielen should be. He should be the guy that is reliable, that will be there with the quarterbacks in trouble. And so for Xavier Legette, I gave him a B+, because again, I see this being a bit more of like an 800 to even 900 yard year for him. I like this guy a lot. This is really who I wanted the Panthers to draft. I know a lot of people wanted A.D. Mitchell, who ultimately fell to the Colts, but in my opinion, he fell for a reason, and Xavier Legette is someone that the Panthers desperately needed. Nothing against A.D. Mitchell. A.D. Mitchell's great, but Xavier Legette is a big build guy, kind of like DK Metcalf. He's fast, and he has good hands. Just someone that can take those crossing routes 55 more yards to the end zone. Not that A.D. Mitchell can't do that, but Legette can do that, and he's also more of a contested catch guy. This guy is a big body receiver. I really like this for Bryce Young, because Bryce Young before was thrown to guys for contested catches because he had to get the ball out of his hands before he got sacked. This year he can do this with trust in someone that's actually good at doing that. There's a big difference. It's kind of like T. Higgins on the Bengals. That guy can go up and one-on-one and grab it. It's not that Burrow's just throwing the ball into pressure. It's that he knows Higgins can go up above everybody else and grab that ball. Legette, may not on the same level as that, but Bryce Young can have that same sort of faith in him, is my point there. So Legette, I like that pick a lot. I have him at B+. The wide receiver room definitely falls off a bit after this. Jonathan Mingo last year, he had a horrible year. I'm going to give him a little bit of grace, just like I've given a lot of guys in this roster, because there are so many things working against a lot of guys, Mingo included. Bryce Young struggled at times, and Mingo made some plays when he got the ball. Other times, it looked like he was learning to catch a football. But sometimes, and I'm not sure how much this is really talked about, but Mingo had his guy beat. I don't want to say consistently, but every so often, and Bryce Young missed him. And that happened, a few times throughout the season where he honestly kind of had someone behind him, and it was kind of, heading for the end zone, maybe on a post, maybe on a streak, whatever it may be. And a good quarterback with a good deep ball probably puts that ball there for Mingo to catch. And Bryce Young just didn't get in there. He overthrew him at times. He underthrew him other times. I think, namely against the Falcons, is one of those times where Mingo actually kind of had a guy beat for a touchdown, and Bryce Young missed him. And that happened a couple more times throughout the season. So I gave him a C+. I don't see him having a huge role because of the guys ahead of him now, but I do think he'll be a bit more reliable. And I don't think too much will be asked of him like it was last season. So it's probably better for him probably better for him anyway. And Terrace Marshall Jr. I gave a C- to, because, I think the time, at least for him to thrive in Carolina, is over. I'm not saying this guy's going to have a bad career. He's still fairly young. Go to a team like the Chiefs. Go to the Bengals. Go to the Bills. Go somewhere where, an excellent elite quarterback will really elevate everybody else on the roster. I think that is when a guy like this will thrive. Mahomes really makes everybody else better. I think a quarterback like that he'd really benefit from. And not saying Bryce Young can't be that, but I think now there's so many guys above Terrace Marshall Jr., it's just not going to happen for him in Carolina. I gave Amir Smith from Marseille a C+. This guy's actually really fun to watch. And I'm not sure how well known he is league-wide, but I think he was a practice squad guy the Chiefs cut last year, I believe. And this dude is really cool. I'm just going to be honest, this dude's really cool to watch. He's very, very fast. He's really explosive on, some jet sweeps. Special teams, especially. We'll get to special teams as well. I'm going to mention this guy again. I gave him a C+ because I think as a receiver, he's not going to be a top receiver on this team. But I wouldn't be surprised if he gets, one of those random 60+ yard touchdowns where he just kind of catches it and just excels and no one can catch him. I think that's definitely possible, definitely on the table. But as far as, again, and we'll get to special teams. I want to keep that separate, at least for right now. David Moore, I don't see doing much. That's just kind of all I have to say about him. He's just kind of there. Jalen Coker, though, I want to mention this guy. So, again, this is someone that, whenever you're watching this, depending on how, late in the offseason is, he might not even be on the roster. I don't know. But I wanted to highlight him because I think this is someone that could actually be somewhat good. I believe he's from Holy Cross as an undrafted free agent that the Panthers signed. And I think he has a little bit of potential. I'm not going to say he's going to step in and, be unbelievable, because it had an unbelievable career, because I believe Adam Thielen actually was, in fact, undrafted back whenever, he first came to the league. I'm not saying Jalen Coker has that kind of full, 10-year career potential, but he is someone that I want to keep an eye on. I just want to highlight throughout the offseason and workouts of his performance. And if you guys are watching this now in, June, or if you're watching this in August, I'm not sure if he'll be there or not, but if he's on the roster, I just want to watch for him, just in case, because this is someone that I think has a bit more potential than someone like David Moore and Terrace Marshall Jr., and honestly, maybe even Jonathan Mingo if given the right opportunities. So I want to highlight him, but yeah, that is how I feel about Bryce Young's receivers heading into 2024. Now on to defense, and let's start with the Panthers cornerback room. This is when things get a little sketchy. It's already been a little sketchy on offense, but this one gets a little sketchy on defense. JC Horn, I could honestly talk for a while about, because this is someone that should be much better and much more respected than where he is currently. And unfortunately, it's really because of injuries. When this guy's played, he's been very good. I know for a time in 2022, he was allowing the lowest passer rating when targeted, but he can't stay healthy. He can't stay on the field. And after a certain amount of time, you know, maybe it's not in your control, but it's going to affect your grade and how people see you. So, I gave him an A minus, and here's why. Because from what I've heard, he has changed his off-season workouts and how he's preparing for the season, because he's aware that he obviously cannot stay on the field. So with that, and when I do all these predictions, I never predict as if someone gets hurt, because I just feel like that's kind of stupid, to be honest. But when a player has a significant amount of injury history, I think that is important to weigh. JC Horn is one of those players. So the reason he's not higher, if this dude had no injury history, he probably would have been an A or an A plus. But I don't know if he can stay on the field. So that's why he has an A minus. If he can stay on the field, I absolutely love JC Horn's ability in man coverage. I love him in Avero's defensive scheme. And I think he's one of the better corners in the league. But the sample size is just so small. I know not a lot of you guys will agree with me on that, and that's fine, because there isn't a lot to go off of. But I think that when he is healthy, when he has been healthy, he has been one of the better corners in the NFL. I believe the Panthers did decline his fifth-year option. So this is really kind of a prove-it season, because, again, new regime taking over. This wasn't their pick. He's a great player. They know he's a great player, but if he can't stay healthy, they're going to be looking other directions for other guys, because you can't just keep, hoping this guy will stay healthy year after year. So, again, like I said for, I cannot remember who I said this for, but this will be the highest you will see me on JC Horn. I said it for Ike Ekwonu. This will be the highest you will see me on JC Horn, unless he stays healthy after this season. If he's not healthy after this season, that grade is going to be way down there if he's still on this roster by next year. But, again, if he stays healthy, this is a great corner. I have him as an A minus. After that, there is a huge drop-off, at least in my opinion. Some people might like Dane Jackson a bit more than I do, but to be honest with you, I think of what's going to be asked of him, because this cornerback room is really not that great. I think he's going to struggle. I think he's someone that probably will benefit. I mean, like a lot of players, that would benefit from, stronger guys in the secondary at safety, and even D-line, helping get the ball out quick and stuff like that. I don't really trust his man-to-man ability or, his zone ability too much either, to be honest with you. I think he's a fine corner. Like, he can be a starter, but this isn't someone like JC Horn that, like, I feel confident, putting, like this guy being on, like, a wide receiver too, like Chris Godwin. I wouldn't feel super great about that, to be perfectly honest with you, especially out of the slot. So, Dane Jackson, I have at C. Troy Hill, I also have at C, which... This might seem like a weird ranking, but Troy Hill has already been in this system, and he's already kind of shown what he can do. That's kind of why I have that at C there. He's not the best corner in the world, but I think he is good enough for this team. Ideally, someone like this is more of a depth piece, but that's just not where we're at with the Panthers right now. So I have him at C. Deshaun Jameson, I have a D. I don't think he's that good, and I don't think he'll get many reps. I think the Panthers are probably hoping the rookie, Chai Smith-Wade, if I said that correctly, stepped up a bit more. I have him at C minus because this is like a 5th, 6th round rookie. I'm not going to put a 5th, 6th round rookie corner at, C plus or something like that. I put C minus. D is where I feel like they're really just a non-factor. C minus is a bit more, kind of, not great, but not really hurting the team per se. You're just kind of there. You're probably going to struggle, but might have some flashes as well. And that's kind of how I see Smith-Wade. I would absolutely love if he comes in as like this hidden gem and takes over cornerback 2 or cornerback 3. I mean, that'd be great. I just don't know if that's going to happen. So I have him at C-, but I do want to highlight him because he is someone that, because of the lack of depth at corner, he could definitely get in. And also, I said this earlier as far as players not being on the roster. As far as players being added to the roster, I know that's going to happen. I know there's a lot of free agents out there, like even Justin Simmons. For the Panthers that I feel like they might sign, there's a chance, is Stephon Gilmore. He's not on the team yet, so I can't put him on here. And when I post this, in June and he gets signed beginning of July, he's not going to be here. I don't think with all the free agents left, when they go to whatever teams, whenever they get signed, I don't think the guys left are grade changing as far as defense. Like adding Stephon Gilmore to this defense does not change the entire grade to me. It changes the secondary or the cornerback room. It changes the cornerback room grade or the cornerback depth especially. It doesn't change the overall grade. So I'm pretty confident about doing these now where these guys coming in will definitely mix up my grades a little bit if they're not on the roster, but I don't think it's going to hurt my overall predictions enough. But with that said, the Panthers need Stephon Gilmore. I mean, if they're going to sign him, it's going to make a lot of difference pushing Dane Jackson or Troy Hill to cornerback 3 instead of 2. I will definitely say that. So hopefully they get him. I think that'd be really cool. Even at this point in his career, I think Gilmore is still probably, B tier, B plus. I mean, he's a great player. So that'd be very beneficial for them. But other than that, I don't love their cornerback room. If J.C. Horn gets hurt, pray for that secondary. And speaking of secondary, let's go to safeties. So this is very interesting to me. I went ahead and put free safety and strong safety, both on here with Xavier Woods and Jordan Fuller. Xavier Woods I gave a C+. I have not loved Xavier Woods with his time in Carolina. I think there are worse starters. I think Carolina could put worse players in, like Sam Franklin or Jamie Robinson or even Nick Scott for that matter. But I think ideally you would have this guy as a depth piece. I don't love him as a starter, so I have him at C+. Jordan Fuller I gave a B. I actually liked this signing a lot because, man, if they did not sign Jordan Fuller, it would have been an ugly safety room for this season. He's a good player, though. I think he's going to honestly play pretty well for them. I'm not sure how they'll really use him. I'm not sure if he's going to be more of like a hybrid guy. I don't think he really will be. I think that was more like Jeremy Chin's thing, and he wasn't even used like that. So I can't see someone else coming in and being used like that. So Jordan Fuller, I think, will be pretty good in secondary. I'm kind of indifferent when it comes to his coverage abilities. I don't think they're like exceptional, but I don't think he's like Nick Scott for that matter. So I like the signing a lot. And as far as Nick Scott goes, again, this is a veteran, played in Cincinnati. He was okay. I think he was actually on the Rams before that. I could be wrong, but I believe he was. He's a veteran. I'm not going to hate on a veteran. I think he's going to provide at least maybe some leadership, but I would rather him stay as a depth piece and not be like, the guy this year. So I'm okay with that, but I have a C- on him. And I have a D for Sam Franklin, Jamie Robinson. Sam Franklin had an awesome pick 6, like 99 yards or something in Kirk Cousins last season. I'm sure you guys have probably seen that highlight. But if you haven't, then that's fine because that's basically the guy's only highlight. It was a great play, but he's not a great player per se, I guess. And then Jamie Robinson, yeah, pretty much non-factor there. So I can see Sam Franklin getting in more than I can Jamie Robinson, and it doesn't really excite me. He's been in the system, so it doesn't make me freak out, I guess, but I'm not excited for Sam Franklin to get in the game. I would really love if it sticks to Xavier Woods, Jordan Fuller, kind of Nick Scott rotation there, but we'll see how that goes. But that's how I really feel about the Panthers safety room heading into 2024. Now on to linebackers. So the Panthers run a 3-4 defense. So DJ Wonnum and Jadeveon Clowney will probably be, edge rushers and whatnot. I believe they're currently weak side linebacker, strong side linebacker. So we'll see how they're utilized. But I did, just for the sake of formation, throw them in the linebacker category instead of D-line. So starting with DJ Wonnum. So I like this guy. I think this guy can give the Panthers, honestly, a pretty good presence off the edge. And I think he actually, at least as far as sacks go, had a pretty similar year to Brian Burns last season. I think Burns is obviously the better player, but I think DJ Wonnum is not a horrible replacement for the immediate, year after loss of Brian Burns. Although recently, apparently I'm not sure if it's complications or a setback, something with his quadriceps surgery for the offseason, so I don't like hearing that. I'm going to keep him at B tier and assume that gets sorted out and he bounces back by the time the season comes around. If that's a whole, extended week thing of not being able to practice and out of it, then that would really suck and probably move that down to a B- or even C+ if it's a huge complication. So hopefully that's all okay there, but I have him as a B. I have Shaq Thompson at B+. I think this guy's going to come in and really light it up. Shaq Thompson's a great player. He was hurt all last season. I think he's going to benefit a lot from Avero's system. I think he's probably the strongest veteran presence on this team. I mean, his rookie season, he went to the Super Bowl, that Cam Newton led, Panthers team. This guy's a lot of experience. He's been on both sides of this Panthers spectrum as far as winning a lot of games and losing a lot of games. And I think pairing him with Josie Jewell is a really nice move. And if I'm not mistaken, Josie Jewell played under Avero in Denver as well. So I like them going out and getting him, bringing him in. I like that a lot. So pairing him with Shaq Thompson, I think is a great move and a system that really benefits both of those guys. And then Jadeveon Clowney, I gave him a C+. Clowney's a good player this stage in his career and really nothing more. He's not someone that if he was the sole best edge rusher on this team, I would not be happy. Being where he's at, it doesn't excite me that we're going to depend on him a little bit this year. I guess not we. I'm not doing anything. The Panthers will have to depend on him a little bit this year. But I'm okay with him, being on the team, getting in there, protecting the edge, the outside a little bit, getting the quarterback. I think Clowney is a good depth piece at this point in his career. So hopefully not too much is asked of him. I have him as a C+, so heading into this year. Next, okay, so I gave Trevin Wallace a C-. This is a rookie the Panthers drafted that a lot of people were not happy about. A lot of people really wanted, I think it was Peyton Willis, I think was his name, out of NC State. That guy, I don't even think he has an ACL in one of his knees, and he has a significant injury history, I think also with a neck thing as well. Personally, I know that guy's a great player. I wasn't really sold on him with the whole injury thing. So I think drafting a guy like Trevin Wallace who really can fly all over the field, I think is a nice move. I think he also will benefit greatly from sitting under Shaq Thompson and Josie Jewell. I like that a lot. And hopefully he's not thrown in there. I really hope, Shaq Thompson can stay. Really everybody stay healthy, but, Shaq Thompson, especially coming off that huge leg injury he had, hope he can stay in there. Because Trevin Wallace, I think, can be a good player, but he is not a year-one starter at all. He's a developmental player. And then as far as Clavon Chaisson, I think is how you say his name. This is someone that has been pretty underwhelming since coming into the league. I have him at C-. I don't really know what to expect from this guy, to be perfectly honest with you. But from what I've seen from fans of the Jaguars, I guess not a whole lot. And to be honest, there's nothing that I've seen that really makes me think differently, to be honest with you. So that's why I have him at C- there as well. I don't think it's the worst linebacker room in the NFL, but it's definitely not anything that jumps off the page to me either. But yeah, that's where I have them. And now finally for defense is the Panthers D-line. And I know something's probably sticking out to you guys on this, which we'll get to in just a second, but let's start with A'Shawn Robinson. So I gave him a C+. I think this was a nice move to get him veteran presence for the D-line, help try and, patch up the production that's going to be lost from Brian Burns. I'm totally cool with this move. I don't know if I'm going to, say, oh, this guy's going to be great and provide them with a bunch of great reps. I don't think that's necessarily the case, but I think he's going to do enough to just kind of be there. And, it's not going to bring down the team per se, but I think there are definitely better starters, obviously. Derek Brown, I gave S. S is the highest there is that I can give out, at least for my grading system I'm doing, because it relates to my tier lists. So I'm sure a lot of you watching this video probably didn't think I would give an S tier to anyone on the Panthers, because you probably don't think that anyone on the Panthers is worthy of S tier. And if you don't have Derek Brown S tier, I think the lowest you can have him is A+, because this guy set the NFL record last year with tackles for defensive linemen. He had 13 tackles for either a gain of 0 yards or less. He did have a couple sacks, I believe, and he was one of the best run stoppers in the entire NFL. When he was drafted, he had a fairly okay rookie year. He was a bit underwhelming, but he has really started to kind of take shape and grow over the past couple seasons. Last season being his best. I think he keeps getting better after that. This guy, I think, is going to be a top 5 run stopper for D-line, for nose tackles, defensive tackle, whatever you want to call it, for this season. And to be honest with you, I do all this with, as little bias I possibly can. And I don't really think that's a biased opinion on this. I know you guys might not have him as S tier, or maybe even not top 5. I'd have him pretty close to top 5, if not top 5. But I think when you look at it, you look at the metrics and, I guess stuffs, as ESPN labels it, Derek Brown is very high up there in a lot of those categories for defensive tackles. So I have him continuing to grow on that season. I think the system benefits him a lot. I love what he did last season, and I think with some better guys around him, he can just still be a huge leader on that team. And he is probably the Panthers' best player, best defensive player, I would say, maybe even best player on the team. He's very close to it, if not the best. So I have him as S tier. But after that, it hurts. Shy Tuttle have C minus. I don't love Shy Tuttle. He's been around. I think he's on the Saints. I honestly nothing to say about that. I don't think I could have given him a D, to be honest. I think it'd be relatively just non-factor. But the Panthers rookie Jaden Crumedy they drafted from was that Arkansas, I believe. Nope, Mississippi. I just can't read. So I gave him a C grade going into this season because this guy was drafted to help stop the run. Derrick Brown is a great player, but he does need some help. Looking at this with A'Shawn Robinson and Shy Tuttle, those aren't guys that I would love to start the whole year or even, seasons ahead from now. I am really hoping that Jaden can develop into being an excellent run stopper, just like Derrick Brown. I think he at least has some good veteran presence, I guess, above him. So that makes me happy, and being able to sit under Derrick Brown and learn a lot through him also makes me very happy. So I have hopes for him. I gave him a C. I think if he gets in, he will be better than Shy Tuttle. I think as the year goes on, more reps are involved. I think Jaden Crumedy does win this job from Shy Tuttle, at least in my opinion. I think that, come week 14, I think he's going to be, probably would have shown a lot and enough to be kind of the starter. I hope, because I really don't have a lot of confidence in Shy Tuttle. So that's how I feel about the Panthers D-line. And then next is special teams. And so first off, let's go with Eddie Pinheiro. I don't like this guy. I'm going to be completely honest. He's been a fine kicker. He's missed some pretty big kicks, especially the one in Atlanta a couple seasons ago. But he has been fairly reliable within probably 50 yards. After that, it's a little shaky. And he's currently not showing up to OTAs and stuff like that. So I don't know who he thinks he is. All right, I'm going to be honest. You're on a 2-15 team. You're not on some, Super Bowl caliber team. You're not holding out. You know how easy it is to replace a guy on a 2-15 team. I know he's a fine kicker, but I think that's a very interesting decision to hold out like he's doing. And so we'll move along the line here, but I do want to come back to kicker in just a second here. And then next is Johnny Hecker, who's a pretty good punter. Not much to really say about the punters and stuff. I mean, sometimes they are some of those unsung heroes that really pin opposing offenses inside the 10, the 5 when they really need to. Hecker's very solid. He's had a very long career, I believe. I know he's on the Rams at one point. So, I have him with a B grade. And next, Raheem Blackshear. He's not one of the best returners in the entire league. I do think there will be times this season where he'll bring some kicks back across the 50, which are very good returns. But I would say probably no more than 2 of those. And beyond that, I don't think he's a huge kick return threat. And after that, long snapper, DJ Jensen. I mean, how do you grade a long snapper? I don't know. He's fine. Maybe he's an exceptional long snapper. I have no idea. But that's the only grade I really gave him. And then next is Harrison Mevis. So I want to come back to this guy because this is someone the Panthers signed as an undrafted free agent, and he is so far 20 for 20 on field goals in this offseason. And again, that's much different than in games, but his longest has been 60 yards, and those are kicks that Eddie Pinheiro is probably not hitting consistently. So this is a serious threat to whatever his job, so I gave him a higher grade. I believe he will become the starting kicker. Whether Pinheiro comes back and ultimately tries to win his job back over or not, I really think it's going to end up being the rookie to win it, and I'm really excited for him. So that's why I have him there. And then Amir Smith-Marset, I gave a bit of a better grade for special teams than I did for on the offense, because this guy's honestly a great returner, and I do think he will return either. I think he's punt return, not kick returner. So one punt return this year, I think he will pull it off. I think he's amazing. He's great vision, very explosive. So I like him a lot, and that's really all there is for the special teams. I'm not gonna spend a ton of time on that because of the punters and the long snappers. There's not a whole lot to really break down, but there is an interesting kicking battle going on in Carolina that I think the rookie will ultimately win. And so I went ahead and also made it incredibly simple, about as simple as it can possibly get for this. And I went ahead and made a little bar graph. I'm going to do this for every single team just to kind of see where they rank as far as their offense as a whole and defense as a whole after kind of seeing all the individual player grades for each position group. So for offense, I have in that C to C plus range, really more C. And here's the thing, because people might not like that because of the guys that Panthers, just got for Bryce Young and all this kind of stuff. And while I think they're absolutely awesome additions, we got to remember that last season, everything went wrong for the Panthers that really could have gone wrong, especially on offense. They were D-tier offense. F-tier offense. It was horrible. This year, while I think they take a step up, we got to also remember this is really probably Bryce Young's rookie year because, like Trevor Lawrence with, Urban Meyer, that year was horrible. Things are ran terribly. It was awful. That next year was really more like his rookie year. I think it's going to be very similar for Bryce Young. I think he's going to show a lot this year. Not a lot of them are going to result in wins, in my opinion. I think they have great weapons around him. I think this is a year where he starts learning a new system. They're instilling this new footwork in him. They're getting the fundamentals down, and Bryce Young can really settle into the team. I think next season, if everything goes right for the Panthers this year, next season you guys will see me be fairly high on this team. This season will not be it. I'm telling you guys that right now. For my predictions at least, I think it will be an improvement for sure. It will be watchable football. It will not be a playoff year. But I think, again, if things go right, this is one of those stepping stones you gotta get to get better than this. And I think with the coaching changes, I think with the offensive guys they've brought in to help Bryce Young out, it's going to get there, but just not all this season, in my opinion. So I have the offense there. I have the defense like A-, B+, more A-. I think they were great last season with all the injuries. I think if guys can stay healthy this year, I think they're even a little bit better. They keep this offense and this whole team in games. That overall slightly higher than the offense with like that C+ area from, being a D-tier team or an F-tier team, if you want to put an F on there too. That's what they probably were more like last season. I think C+ is honestly a huge improvement, and I would be happy with that. So let's get to their schedule. Back to ESPN before we get to like my whole, I have a schedule thing I made too to make it easy to understand like my record predictions and all. So just looking at this, the Panthers, they don't have a easy schedule. They don't have a super tough schedule. They did get some unfortunate divisions to have to face, though. They have to face the NFC East and all of the AFC West. And look, there's plenty I could talk about for every single one of those teams in each of those divisions. I'm going to keep that fairly brief. But, they got the Bengals on there. They got the Chiefs on there. Eagles on there. Cowboys on there. I mean, if the Bears are as good as they should be with Caleb Williams in there, they'll also be very tough. Those are some very tough games already right off the bat. The Panthers have to capitalize on their division games and some of the easier outside division games like Washington, New York, Arizona, I think will be fairly similar to the Carolina Panthers next season. So they've got to capitalize on those. And now let's go and look at my kind of record prediction. So I have the Panthers going 5-12. That is a 3-game improvement, and that is my realistic prediction for them, which I see is kind of the floor, assuming everything did improve as it should have. So let's start week 1 at the Saints. I'm not going to spend as much time on every single game, obviously, but just starting with the Saints here. This will be a close game, in my opinion, but I don't love Carolina starting on the road in New Orleans. I think it's going to be a little tough. So I do have them losing this game. I had them losing in Carolina against Herbert. I think while the Chargers might not be great, Herbert is very tough to beat, and that might be a pretty tall task for that defense with a secondary that I don't love. As far as the Raiders go, this is one that I could definitely see being a win. I kind of went on just like my gut instinct here and just put loss. Because here's the thing, while I think it gets better for the Panthers, I think this season starts out rough regardless because there's going to be some growing pains. It's a new offense, new coach, a lot of new guys on the team. I think it's going to start slow before they do pick it up a little bit in the mid-season range, which is kind of the approach I took to this record prediction. So I could see the Raiders being a win, but again, that O-line will be tested with Max Crosby and Christian Wilkins on that D-line. That's going to be a tough game for that O-line. Bengals, I think that's going to be a loss. I just don't see the Panthers going in there with Cincinnati and winning that game. Chicago I put as a loss because, quite frankly, I think Caleb Williams does not have to be this superstar rookie to be good in that offense. He needs to be average quarterback to be good in that offense. You got DJ Moore, you got Keenan Allen, Cole Kmet, Gerald Everett, DeAndre Swift. It's a very, very good offense. Even their defense was like Jalen Johnson. Like, they got some good players on that team. I'm putting loss there. If Caleb Williams happens to flop, that could be much different. I have the Falcons beating Carolina in Carolina, and this is where I have things picking up for the Panthers. So I have them going into Washington after starting 0-6, beating Jaden Daniels. Washington is a team that I think is going to struggle a lot this year, and I think the Panthers take advantage of that, and they win on the road for win number 1, going to 1-6. I think they keep it going, and they beat the Broncos in Denver on the road Denver is a very polarizing team, at least in my opinion, from their quarterback situation to their defense. There's a lot of things there that I'm a little shaky about. And just for the record, just so we're all clear here, just because I have the Panthers beating a team does not mean I think that team is going to have a worse year than the Panthers, just so we're all clear on that. So I have the Panthers beating the Broncos there, and I think that win streak extends to the Saints, where they come back, they beat them in Carolina then. I think they beat the Giants in Carolina, who's going to have one of those rougher years, in my opinion, for the Giants. After that, Chiefs is tough. They lose that one. I think the Buccaneers come into Carolina, and they lose that one. However, that is one game that I think could also be different. So I think, you have Dave Canales in there from the Buccaneers, now in Carolina, kind of like maybe like a revenge type of game for him, beating his former team that he just, coached for. And I think, obviously, as great as Baker Mayfield was last year, he always is going to have one of those games where it looks like he's never played football before, and it's always possible that happens in Carolina for that divisional game. But I do have the Panthers losing that one, but that is one I could see flipping. Losing to the Eagles in Philadelphia, losing to the Cowboys in Carolina, beating the Cardinals. I think the Cardinals are going to be pretty similar to Carolina, and I think they lose on the road to them. Panthers going to Tampa Bay and losing, and then Panthers going to Atlanta and losing. So for division, I am getting swept by the Falcons and the Buccaneers, with the exception of that one Buccaneers game, which I could see being different. Then I had them splitting with the Saints, and I had them splitting with the NFC East, and then I also have them not splitting with the AFC West. I think I had them getting swept. No, sorry, going 1-4 against the AFC West. So, again, record prediction 5-12. I think if things are even better than I thought, and the Panthers turn a bunch of stuff around, then I could see them beating the Saints week 1, beating the Raiders, and beating Tampa Bay there in Carolina, which would be 8-9 on the season. And if things get really crazy, maybe they beat Atlanta and Carolina and get 9 wins. But that is a stretch, in my opinion. Atlanta's going to be a tough team with Kirk Cousins in there. So 5-12 for the Panthers this season is my final prediction, getting last in the NFC South. But 5-12 after being 2-12 and looking absolutely pathetic. 5-12 is a good step, at least in my opinion. I think it's a pretty conservative prediction. I'm not predicting them to have a serious turnaround like the Texans did. But I don't think 5-12 is a bad year for the Panthers, assuming Bryce Young takes a step, the defense stays solid, and that they stay healthy first off, and that the Panthers' weapons they surround Bryce Young with also perform well. That's a great season, at least in my opinion, considering how bad last season was. So guys, that is my final kind of, prediction for the Panthers this year. I think it's fairly realistic. I didn't go and say it's going to be a huge, 8-10 game turnaround. I think it's, 3 games is, I think, expected with the coaching changes, with how good that defense already was. Bryce Young taking a leap, I think it's all there. And that's the floor. If it's a huge turnaround, maybe they end up getting 8. I personally think it's a little bit of a reach, but I think 5 wins is very realistic. I like that for Carolina. And if that happens, if everything goes to plan, this next offseason, I'll be much higher on this team. So I'm just going to leave it at that. If you guys did enjoy, be sure to subscribe to my channel. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Also leave a like. It really helps get my content out there. And yeah, so next is going to be whatever NFC South team I have coming in third in that division. I'll let you guys kind of figure that out, as far as whenever I upload it. It'll be out soon, though, within next 3-4 days. Basically doing 2-3 of these videos a week all the way until the season starts. This should be done at the rate I'm going sometime in August before the season starts. So thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. If you guys have any ideas on how I can improve this series, comment that down below. But yeah, other than that, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.